And you're still live with us here on Newsfile. It's been a pretty exciting conversation so far on the first part where we talked about the LG anti-gay bill, which is before Parliament. Let's talk about Tor now. And my guests are joining me shortly. But before I do that, I want to share a few of your messages coming in on the subject we just looked at on the gay issue. As you can guess, it's one of those very emotive subjects, and so the views are quite a lot. This is from Numbo on Twitter. Says, yes, one can be academically knowledgeable and still support LGBTQ, but no man can say he's of good morals and still promote homosexuality because it's against our values. Papa says Professor Kendeko should tell us how homosexuality can be biological. Please, anyone close to her should tell her we are not joking, with all due respect. K. Amofa says the bill simply frown on the promotion of homosexuality in discussions. We all understand that. We do talk about armed robbery in an educative sense to prevent it. The so-called human rights experts should understand it. Kweku says, in fact, Newsfile, some George and his fellows, they have a huge responsibility to sensitize the whole nation on the bill, because it's either you haven't read the bill or you have read the bill but you do not understand it. Another one says at AQ, Kosia says, not this woman saying God created LGBTQ people. I beg, she should not associate God to this one. He created mankind, but did not usher them into the act of being LGBTQ persons. That's hashtag Newsfile. Let me read a few more. This one from Nyavo says, it's really a shame that uneducated, well, of course, you can't use those terms on panelists. You simply express your view, but we won't allow. He says, well, Amofat says, I thought Ghana was a republic. Let's consider what is in the interest of Ghana and not consider the UN and so on. He argues there. But Faisal says, Professor PJ, we know and it's true that culture is dynamic, but on this LGBTQ plus issue, we will never change our way of life. The bill has to pass. AJ says, rights have limits. You should know about that. Our people say that the fact that no animal should feed on the other doesn't mean the mouse can just be playing in front of the cat anyhow. In this adage, the mouse has freedom and the right, but it ends somewhere. And the final one, Oscar says, the people with almost a unanimous decision are against this. Why should we prolong this matter? So those are a few of your views on the issue. It's a very emotive subject, and I'm pretty sure it will continue until the bill is passed or rejected in Parliament. We see how that unfolds. Let's talk about the Tema Oil Refinery now. And this week we woke up to news published by the Interim Management Committee that they have discovered the disappearance of 150,000 plus gas oil on 4th of September and belonging to a BDC client. Also, the wrongful loading of 250,000 liters of aviation turbine kerosene, the disappearance of 18 drums of electrical cable worth 10.4 million. And then they go back to 2012 and 2015, where they tell us that there was further disappearance of some LPG amounting to 4.8 million. And then we learn, as we interrogated this further, that apparently it is actually the tip of a massive gargantuan iceberg, which has been happening at all for decades without any proper solutions to it. So let's have that conversation now. Some say applaud the work of the IMC. Others say, what for? Dissolve them. I want to bring in John Jinapo. He is a Member of Parliament for Yape Kusogu. He's a minority spokesperson on mines and energy. They issued a statement this week on this particular matter. Sylvester Tete is still with me. Is the MP for Bochano English and Manfro. Senor Hosi is joining me in the studio now. He's a CEO of the Ghana Chamber of Bulk Oil Distributors. Has some very interesting views on how to fix this particular problem permanently. Professor Kwesi is Director of Faculty of Academic Affairs and Research at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center and joins us via Zoom as well. There are very interesting. What networks, for example, encourage this very pervasive, persistent corruption, siphoning of products at all? That's where I want to tap into Professor Aining's expertise a bit more into it, and how you don't just deal with it as an oil and gas matter. Adopt a very thorough forensic approach to tracking and following the money and finding the people who are actually at the helm of this particular matter. It's a security question also, and he will give us his thought. But I want to start with you, Mr. Hossi. So you've said a lot this week, but I doubt there's anything you said this week that you haven't said already before this came to light about Tor. It must really frustrate you.
Well, I'm sure you must have observed I've been on some media hibernation till last week. So,
yes.
Because sometimes the issues in Ghana, it's easy to solve, it's clear, but the will is not there. And for some of us who keep advocating, working up, putting up policy documents, spending time on this and seeing little to no progress, it is frustrating and just sometimes feel like giving up.
Yeah, but the millions and millions that we are losing at all, and some of your members, as we've said, BDC's clients are losing. It's not something that you could just let go.
We can't let go, but I think government is very comfortable with it, because all that happens is that they keep coming up with a new mechanism to pay off the debt, and that mechanism is taxing the people more to pay their debt. So I just don't think that governments have really been interested in really solving it honestly. The other bit to it is that for me, Tor has been a piggy bank for most politically active people. So
please explain that, because this is a company that is losing billions of CDs over the last decade. Look, so how is that?
People are benefiting from that losses. So once there are people benefiting from it, it can only be within a certain class that you would have that. So will you keep losing? Do you think media will keep losing money like this and will just sit by? Kusichum will sit by. It won't happen. No. You know, so if it's happening, then it means that there's an implied complicity on the owners of the whole thing. Because I don't think there's been the commitment. I mean, this IMC has done a great job. I'm very happy about the minister's drive on this particular matter for possibly one of the first times in a long while. So let's have an honest conversation. I mean, do we want to continue doing this? Kufuor started this, trying to deal with the issues of Tor. It was about $400 million at the time. We brought in the Tor debt recovery levy. We have contributed now close to about $1.3 billion US.
Through taxes?
Through the Tor debt recovery levy, yes. You know, the last time I realized I didn't add a part of the 2021 one. So you're almost at 1.3 billion. We've actually spent from out of the ESLA that's 1.3 billion US dollars. Out of the ESLA, we've paid about 2.8 billion Ghana cedis. And once that 2.8 billion Ghana cedis is gone, it means that we're going to collect taxes for possibly another 10 years or another 7 years from now to even be able to recover that 2.8 billion. Who is paying for it? Thermal Oil Refinery is a limited liability company. We all forget. It is not a special corporation. It's not an institution of the state. It's not. It's just a limited liability company owned by the state. And I've said it here. The reason is simple. The directing mind of a Tor in Ghana as is today is not the directing mind that anybody will use to run their own businesses. All right, no private sector runs like that. But a limited liability company must run like that. It doesn't matter who the shareholders are. The board of directors have a certain fiduciary responsibility to optimize the value of the entity. So optimize profit, run efficiently, and run responsibly in the state. We've not had that in a very long time, and it's simple. The objectives of commerce are not the objectives in Tor.
So what is the objective of Tor then?
One, for the general engineers, they just want to see the machine running. The politician wants to just claim that refining is happening. You fill the board with politically active people with no clear commercial responsibility, all right, at all. Nothing happens there that any of them will be held responsible. All right, show me the last time we held any board member of Tor responsible for anything. You just sacked them, and so what? Okay. So if you create losses, and you pretend this, what happens? There are fiduciary responsibilities as a director. You should be careful when you take the role of a director. Nothing happens to anybody. All right, you see, board members, I'll just share a little story. My entry into this industry started with an engagement led by a politician in Tor. And the conversation was about some crude cargo coming in. And the conversation was about what part had to go to somebody and what part had to go to somebody. That whole transaction was a fluke because I was in structured trade finance. And that's how come I realized that Tor was never going to go anywhere. Because from board members to whoever it is, from politicians to party activists, everybody is looking for one kind of deal that you can get out of Tor at any point in time. That is the truth. You get politicians putting in staff, workers, and their families, friends, all kinds of people in there. How can a 45 barrel a day refinery be run by over 1,000 people? You know, last time we got the Dangote, what the name, technical advisor at the Ghana International Petroleum Conference, and he couldn't believe it. He said that refinery it should not be run by more than 100 people. Top it up 150, but you have what? 1,000 people there. And today, if I'm MD of Tor, or you are made MD of Tor, somebody will call you, please get this person and put there. The last time the union, if I'm not mistaken, raised some complaints at the ministry, where they were saying that national service personnel of over 100 have been pushed there. Meanwhile, they are there sitting there and they can't actually even get salaries to pay the real workers. This was some of the concerns that people had. Who is behind all these things? That's why, to cut this whole story short, we can't keep bleeding the poor man, poor Ghana man every day. But just the fact that we know that when we just slap a tax on petroleum, it will be paid. We can't continue that. That is bad policy making. I went to Pantan Hospital, GSS, and Primary today. It was a sorry sight. And I don't really think that politicians, when they travel and they see the poverty in this country, they should really be running the country sometimes the way we do. It is very disheartening. You go to schools where people just have to defecate only in the bush. Because the one toilet that's there is only for the headmaster. You understand? And then we sit here and then we waste money, lose money carelessly. It is heartbreaking.
Let me bring in John Junapol. They issued a statement this week. John, Senor Hossi says that the IMC has done a great job, and I think he believes that at least it's a start. It's a start to trying to take on the problem. You agree?
By doing what? That's the question. By allowing that parcel of crude to be missing, or because the BDC comes knocking on the door and asking for their crude, they have no choice than to institute a probe. What they should have done was to prevent this huge loss, first of all. And when the minister sworn in this IMC, it was clear that there were losses, and this IMC was supposed to move in and curtail such losses. Don't forget, this is not Tor's oil. This is oil belonging to a private company that decided to rent the facilities of Tor. Tor's core business is not even to be renting those tanks to BDCs. BDCs originally are supposed to have their own tank farms, import their finished products and sell. Tor hasn't been operating efficiently for quite a while, and we all agree. It's a capacity that can do about 45,000 barrels from the CDU, 14,000 barrels from the RFCC. And so in terms of numbers, they can ramp up and do something. But like Senor said, there are real challenges with Tor. Indeed, I've just been looking at the energy debt. As at 31st August 2017, the total energy debt was about 9.2 billion. 22% of that was attributable to Tor.
Wow.
And so when you strike the 22%, that's about 2 billion. Now there's no more Tor debt recovery levy. All those levies were consolidated into the Energy Sector Levies Act. And you have the energy debt recovery levy, part of which must be used to settle the Tor debt. So far, about 5 billion has been transferred to ESLA PLC. And yet, as I speak to you, Tor's debt, based on our meeting with them, that is the Mines and Energy Committee, at the last meeting, is about 3 billion cedis as I speak to you currently. In fact, in 2019, just 4 months, they made a loss of 186 million. Don't forget, the minister told us in 2018 that Tor was going to be turned into a tank farm, and that a new refinery will be established in Takoradi. That refinery, according to him, would cost about 4 billion. And so the question is that within this period, what have we done? I think that is very important. I think that government officials and those at the helm of affairs must tell us exactly what they have done. And like Sonia said, it's a limited liability company. Strictly speaking, it is the board that ought to be appointing management. The job of the shareholder or the ministry, or in this case, it's now the shares has been transferred to what was what's the name?
Siga.
The president was sworn in since January. I mean, Tor is a strategic asset. It's the only refinery in this country. How come for close to 1 year, we simply cannot inaugurate a board for Tor? What's happening? Is it that we don't have the men? To understand that a 3-member IMC ought to be managing the limited liability company. I disagree that IMC is even necessary. I think that a substantive MD ought to be appointed, devoid of partisan parochial interest. I hold the view that a board ought to be established and inaugurated. Give the board KPIs, tax them, let the board tell you the tools they need. What can we do to ensure that that board functions effectively? If they don't function, clear that board. And then the board would then appoint a managing director and also tax the managing director to achieve certain KPIs. If that doesn't happen, the board has the authority to fire them. I don't think that should be the job of a minister to be stepping in and appointing IMCs and all that. A limited liability company must function like a limited liability company. Is that how limited liabilities companies function? This is not how they function. The shareholder doesn't just move in and appoint an IMC. It's long overdue. This IMC, I hold the view that they were supposed to prevent these losses. That has not happened. It's time that we constitute a board. It's time that we appoint a managing director, tax them, and also look at the long-term view of Tor. Like we all say, with the numbers, because for a typical refinery, you don't determine the price of crude oil. That is the input. Neither do you determine the price of the output, which is the refined product, because the price of crude oil is determined in the world market. And then the price of the refined product, which is like kerosene, diesel, and all that, is determined by the MPA here. So the only way you can remain profitable is if you are efficient. This refinery was established in 1960. It is old. It is old. If you put in 1 barrel, you won't get even 1 barrel out in terms of the monetary value. So clearly a decision must be taken on Tor. If we want to revamp it, let's revamp it. Let's look for the money. If we want a strategic investor, let's do that. But we can't keep pushing things around. I don't think that this IMC, in any case, will solve the problem. But the problem for Tor is not about people renting their tank farms, putting in finished products, and then coming to sell them. That is not the problem for Tor. The problem for Tor is refinery. It ought to refine crude oil in an efficient, cost-effective manner. Yeah. That is what we ought to be looking at.
Senya, quickly on this, and I'm going to get Prof. and
inaugurating the board is a great idea, but it's meaningless. We've inaugurated boards, and what have we had? We've had more losses. So that is not the matter. Jinapur has sat at the ministry before. He and me have shared the place on the advisory board, even though he may not have been there, we've been together. He knows clearly that the strategic problem you have is not that it's not going to be solved by the appointment of a board. The IMC has been set up to actually make some necessary inquiries and hold the fort interim, which is a very good decision.
No, but look at the facts. Yeah. The IMC was appointed in June.
Yes.
The losses, the disappearance was recorded on the 4th of September, under their watch.
Yeah, no.
So how is that an effective mechanism to solve the problem? When they themselves have overseen the problem?
You see, you go and inherit a culture. You as management, you may not be able to eliminate everything at a given point in time, but you should be able to spot them and take immediate action and recover.
After the fact.
You are sitting here today. You have people who you give instructions to, and they breach them. But you should have management systems in place to be able to identify and take action. When people use your cars to do private work, you're able to identify them and set up committees to investigate them and take action. They've done the right thing. They've identified the thing. Tell me the last time you heard anything being identified at all under any board. Tell me. This 4.8 million, didn't we have boards there? Tell me the last time you heard of it. When
You mean the one in 2012 and 2015?
2015. Tell me if you heard anything about it. Who uncovered it? The same.
That was the time that Jinapor was.
He was there. He was in the ministry. You have today a $5 million bill from Bust against Tor, product losses as well. Something about $5 million as well. I mean, who is identifying it? So you don't. The key thing here for me is that they are putting in systems to start identifying where the loopholes are. I don't think the IMC is going to have to stay there for long. That's a fact. But the most important thing for Tor going forward is not just the appointment of an MD and another board. It's just another continuation of the problem.
You say privatize it.
That is as simple as that. You have to take a strategic decision about it. Today, nobody should call Tor a strategic asset. It has been a strategic liability, an emotional liability. That's the fact. If you want to turn it into an asset for the state, government is better off taking revenue out of taxes from a functioning Tor under a private sector hand who has skin in the game. Everybody who goes around Tor hasn't got skin in the game. So if an MD goes to cut a deal, $1 on a barrel, and that dollar may just be the whole profit, you think it's just $1. He will be fine. I mean, Sylvester, you'll be working around petroleum a bit. We know what happens at Tor. Tor is going down, but there are some individuals in Tor who are always going up, living very, very good lives. Not lives that look like people who have not been paid a salary in 3 months when you find the union screaming and shouting. Please, you want to deal with the matter. Let's not be discussing IMC or board. That's not the strategic matter. The strategic matter is the strategic problem that has bedeviled Tor all this while. It's a governance matter that feeds into the management matter. He's right when John is right when he says that the board is a limited liability, so there should be a certain mechanism for appointing the board. His government and all the governments before them have never acted like that. They've all been acting as if it's still the president running, managing a ministry through a minister. That's what happens. You have the presidency appointing MDs. That's what happens in this country now. Yeah, whether it's a limited liability, bust, or you go to Tor. So I mean, those are not my problems. The things that governments have shown since 1961 and 1963. 1961-63, in this place, Tor belonged to ENI, Ajib. ENI that we fight here today. That is so those private. I'm going to wrap up something here.
Wrap up quickly.
We moved in, and somewhere in 1977 is when government took over Tor. But prior to that, Tor never had problems.
You see.
When we
so go back to privatization. Let me bring in Professor Dr. Tue Champon, and I'll bring in Dr. Aining shortly, Professor Aining shortly on this. Doc, what's your diagnosis of the Tor problem, and what solutions would you prescribe to it? Do you agree with the view that says simply privatize it, let government get off its hands of this, and let the private sector run it?
Yeah, I mean, good morning. I think Senor is absolutely right. You know, the problems of Tor are financial, they are governance related, and they are operational related. I had a chance to actually do my service at Tor back in 2000, 2008. And some of the issues that you're hearing today in relation to product losses and, you know, things not being found, even back then, 12, 13 years ago, still used to be the case. So it tells you that these issues are age-old. And like Senor is saying, some of the people there are getting rich at the expense of the collective interest of the nation. Interestingly, when you look at the 2019 State Ownership Report, which is under the hand of the Ministry of Finance, all of the key metrics of Tor from 2015 to 2019, negative net profit margin, negative earnings before interest, negative return on assets, return on equity, nothing to write home about. So basically, we have mismanaged over time this, what is supposed to be a strategic national asset. And it goes back to the politics, it goes back to having people there who are not meant to have, you know, done or do the job. I remember when I was there, the total staff strength was probably around 600 and 650. And when we had conversations with people who know their work, they told us that you didn't need more than 200 people to actually run that refinery. So it tells you that the problems are difficult and they are age-old in that sense of the word. So for me, resolving it comes back to what you want to do with the asset. Clearly, you need money, you need investment. I fully subscribe to the view of privatizing Tor and having the government also take some sort of equity or strategic stake in it. So it's not 100% privatization in that sense of the word, but you could still have 1 or 2 board positions and still have a special purpose vehicle owning some stake in the asset. But the running of the asset and the day-to-day operational decisions need to be fully run as, you know, a commercial entity would. None of the people in there would run Tor, and for that matter, many of the state companies that we run, if they had it as their own company. That is the fact. And we have just mismanaged, unfortunately, these assets years, you know, down the line. So I fully subscribe to what Senor has been saying, and to an extent also what John has also said. But I don't think it's just a management issue. The issues go far deeper than that. And this, what we've seen in terms of the losses, is just really a tip of the iceberg. There are bigger criminality and criminal-related issues that happen within the wider you know, downstream or petroleum bulk management chain in Ghana.
I mean, that's a perfect point to bring in Professor Ening, because Prof, it's really shocking, and Dr. Teo Champon just touched on it. If it's been happening for decades, somebody should correct me, I'm yet to hear a story of a prosecution of any of these individuals involved in the siphoning, the disappearance of all these have been going on, the millions and millions and billions that get, you know, lost almost every year from Tor. We know on the back of this latest IMC report that some staff members have been interdicted, right? But if you look at the positions, they are all middle level, you know, small level. There's some, you know, not the big fishes involved. Well, what's your own reading on? How do you go to the bottom of this, the individuals, the networks that encourage such massive corruption at all? Hello, Prof. Prof, can you hear me? If you can please unmute for me. Okay. Okay, I think we lost him, but let me bring Sylvester. Sylvester, so this is happening, obviously, in the period where the ministry has said, we're going to put the IMC in, they'll bring a report, we send it to the president. President looks at their recommendations, and I've heard from the ministry that one of the things they're looking at is also, can we propose some strategic partnerships for Tor to work? What is the game plan here?
Well, thank you very much. And for the game plan, I have no idea what the president will subsequently be doing, or what recommendations the minister responsible for energy will be recommending to the president. But I think that putting Tor in the hands of some strategic partners is long overdue. I mean, the issues of Tor from the days of former President Jerry John Rawlings, it's been on the table, and we've had serious issues with it. And for me, we have unofficial sources within Tor, and we have friends, relatives who works in Tor. And I think that for Tor not to be functioning at the level it has to, or it ought to be functioning today, is man-made. Naturally, it's man-made. It's man-made, nothing else.
But let's push this a bit more. Man-made, but it's created by the politicians.
Well,
why should you have 1,000 people working in a refinery that produces 45
I wouldn't say it's politicians, but I would say it is the leadership or people who have been appointed. No, please. You see, if you are appointed as an MD of a state institution or CEO or minister for whatever it is, you know the place better than anybody else. For me, you know the place better than any individual. The president may only act on information given him. He may not be aware of the day-to-day running of the institution. So for me, I think it's the chief executives that have been appointed, and rightly so the board members. Yeah, but you give board directions.
But there's impunity. Impunity only thrives when there's no responsibility. Nobody's sanctioned, nobody's punished.
Exactly.
The man is just sacked, and he walks away. Meanwhile, he leaves in his wake millions of losses.
Exactly.
Why doesn't the appointing of the political appointed authority sanction people serve as a deterrent to others?
You know that the MD, the immediate past MD, and then the deputy,
were sacked. Yes.
Were sacked. And then an interim management committee was put in place to really investigate the circumstances under which these products got missing. So I think that's the right thing to do. Now, so you bring the report and the president will act on it. But beside the immediate discussion, things that we are discussing now, I mean, Tor has been bedeviled with a lot of challenges in times of old. And I think that if they should go even beyond these things that they've identified, more things will be discovered. And I think that where we are today, Tor, running Tor with 1,000 plus workers, obviously there are hands that will not have anything to do.
Job for the boys. Isn't that where we need to start?
Yes, I think we should have a national conversation.
It was Sly. I'm about to speak Ghana. Sly knows the thing. You are talking about which MD? The MD is there. They'll call him from Flagstaff House or Jubilee House, depending on which government is there. Then you know what name of the house is. You understand? Then Sly is here. He's MP. Or, you know, when he was back then in the go, was running he's a King Kong in that area. He's a very powerful man. No, this man will call you. We have this person. Minister will call you. And let me tell you the biggest side of it, biggest part of the problem is the trading of the crude. Yeah. There's no commercial sense at all. Zero. They don't plan their commerce. None. They don't have one. You want a cargo, some politician will call somebody and say, look, I have this guy who wants to bring crude. Then they practically force the crude on you. You do the deal.
This is a program.
John, go on.
Oh, sorry,
John. Let John.
No,
I'll come to Christine. John, yes.
Some politician calls and says, do this, do this. When you do that, you put all of us in bad light. Exactly. If you know of a particular politician.
John, you can't stand on TV and say you don't know what I'm saying.
Please, let me hear John. Let me hear John react to it. Yeah, John. But you can't deny that politician is part of the problem.
I'll plead with my brother. We are all trying to solve a problem. Yeah. In trying to solve a problem, please, let's not brush all of us with a dirty brush. Even there's a statement before you from Tor. Read it carefully. In April, a drums of cables were missing.
10 million.
Was discovered by that management. When they were about to take action, the minister asked them to step aside and brought in a new manager, which is the IMC. They were supposed to curtail that. On 4th September, Rodas got missing. Beyond 4th September, at the end of September, that is 25th September, 252,000 liters got missing. Senor, I'm virtually saying the same thing with you, that if a whole board, and when it comes to corporate governance, certain decisions can only be taken by the board, cannot fix this problem, which includes finding a strategic partner, because the essence of a board is to bring together a collection of people who have knowledge, who have intellect and understanding of the sector. It's because shareholders cannot manage the company, because they may not have the expertise. That is why they go for a board. The board is supposed to have that expertise, both technical and financial, and to advise the shareholder. And I'm saying that if the board cannot achieve that purpose, I don't believe that a 3-member IMC can achieve that purpose.
Yeah, I mean, let me ask you, John. Let me ask you, John, to the solution. Do you support the view that privatizes? Because that, I guess, is
I support it.
Okay.
During our time, we even went to get a strategic partner. But the truth is that, Senor, even before you get the private sector, you must clean the books. You must put the entity or the company in a certain position that will make it attractive.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that you need a board to clean all these issues, put it in a good shape, like we did with, I think, Airtel. If you recall, Airtel had to be put in a certain position before you then sell it. So we are saying the same thing. All I'm pleading with my friend is that in trying to solve this problem, it's true that there may be some undercurrent, but let's be careful not to brush everybody. Let
me quickly bring in Professor Ining on the Prof. They are individuals, and we've heard the suggestions, politicians, staff, but they are people responsible for the rot at Tor. Why are we not focusing there a bit? Because even if you privatize, you have to work with people.
Yes, but I think what we are looking at is a complex, sophisticated network of individuals, of groups, who over the years have intermixed their personal, company, interest to such a manner that right now it's almost impossible to disentangle them. So we need a really very down-to-earth, methodical approach to disentangling this corrupt network. And it's not something that we can just do by changing an IFC and bringing in a full board. I mean, think of what Tayo was saying. Since government took over in 1977 thereabouts, TOR has had these recurrent problems. Then we need a more sophisticated approach and understanding of the complexities that are underlying the network corruption that we are seeing. And this is not just about TOR. It's the people at TOR, there'll be people at the banks who ensure that the monies are transferred. You know, there are people in the Ghana Police Service who provide, you know, protection for the movement of the oil, in ensuring that, you know, the tankers are not stopped. So what we are looking at is complexity that we need to understand and how that complexity manifests in the thefts that we have. But that complexity and the underpinning structures are things that we experience on a daily basis. I mean, let me share an example with you this morning, where two police vehicles, numbers GP 3894 and 3877, consistently over the George Bush Highway, changed drivers and sought to intimidate people and extort money. They attempted to extort 1,000 cedis from me at 0446 this morning. Okay, so TOR is only a tip of the iceberg, as some of the colleagues on the program have been saying. This is a problem that goes much bigger than TOR. And I'm hoping that we have the sophisticated approaches, the understandings of complexity theory to be able to begin the process of dismantling, you know, what is really a threat to both our security in all its manifestations, but particularly to the economy.
I mean, Dr. Achampong, TOR is not attractive, and it won't be attractive to, I mean, I can dare say any private investor.
Not necessarily.
I mean, I'm coming. Let me disentangle it. Because, as John Jinapong has said, because of the debt that it's carrying. So how do you restructure TOR as it currently stands to make it, because you support the privatization angle, how do you restructure TOR as it stands now to make it attractive to anybody who wants to come and invest in and put their money in it?
There are various approaches to it. One of which is you can actually ring fence the debt, right? And deal with that as a separate entity away from the going concern operations of the business. That's a decision that government has to take. But ultimately, you're right. As it stands now, if you were to package it as an investment proposition, you wouldn't maybe find too many of buyers wanting to get into without having to fundamentally restructure and deal with the debt issues, as well as the corporate governance and the related operational issues. I mean, I do recall, in 2008, when I was there, one night we were on a shift where you just get a call that like a particular tanker full of crude oil is sitting somewhere on the seas, and they want to pump this particular crude, into the tanks at TOR. But the point being that there was all sort of shady mechanisms and deals, right, underpinning it. I cannot go into the substantive details, but what Prof was saying earlier is that there is a very complex network and web that underpins the things that we see happening at TOR. Someone I know who works there actually said, look, that whole refinery should even be treated as a crime scene, because there are things that happen there that if you were to get national security or these guys going in there, you'll be shocked at the level of theft and pilfering that takes place in there. So going forward, dealing with the debt issues becomes paramount. I think that can be ring-fenced. I think that can be treated as a separate entity and then repackage the operations of the business for that strategic investor to come in and want to support it. I don't believe that the way we have run the refinery as currently pertains is the best. Literally, we have turned TOR into a tank farm. It is meant to be refining crude and supporting the strategic well-being of the nation. But what we see is completely the other way around.
I mean, Sylvester, is there political will to do what Professor Dr. Champon is saying?
Well, I think for the good of our society and the generality of Ghanaians, we should. And I believe that the president has the goodwill and then the political will to do the needful. I also have no doubt and the confidence in the energy minister that he will do what is right. I mean, he started. This issue of IMC is to unravel the situation on hand, and it will take a decision. So for me, I will plead that Ghanaians should become, as the IMC had assured the management and then the team over there. Look, no investor will pick Tor at its current stage. No investor, until we take away the debt. Because the investor also need to bring money to change the equipment and put in proper structures to be able to work as it ought to work. And the point I wrote down I was going to make was about the point that the professor just made about Tor being turned into a tank farm. I can't believe it.
Which is a kind
now it's more attractive for people to come and use your facility, and you make some commissions from there. Where your core mandate, it's because of the debt levels of Tor. That is why now banks are not even supporting them to perform their core mandate. Because if Tor is giving money today to bring in crude oil and it's finished, people are on them. Their debtors, you see, all these cases are in court. Yeah. And I believe that the figures we are looking at now may not be the ultimate price we'll be paying when we finally get settled.
I'll come to you to wrap up, but finally.
Finally, what I'm saying is that, yes, there's a situation. I believe that the president has the goodwill of the good people of this country, and he has a mandate to do that. So I'm hopeful the president will do that.
I mean, John, let me go to John. You want Parliament to take over the probe. I mean, what difference would that make?
Probe. Parliament is already written to Tor. I've confirmed with the clerk of the committee that under the instruction of the chairman, we are asking for further and better particulars because we have an oversight responsibility. And as representatives of the people, I think that it's important that we get all the facts right. Two is that I'm happy that Sylvester says that he doesn't think that Tor should be turned into a tank farm. As we speak, that is the position of government. Since government told us that they want to turn Tor into a tank farm, I haven't heard of any contrary view from government. So first of all, we must even know, what does government think of Tor? Because government is the owner. What does the owner think of that entity? What does the owner want to do with Tor? Okay. Is this still on the part of making Tor into a tank farm? Or it believes in revamping Tor? Because you must process a certain minimum amount of crude per day. If you don't do that, you won't break it. And in this day, I think the threshold for a country like Ghana should be minimum about 70 to 100,000 barrels per day. If you can't achieve that, forget it. Then the complexity of the refinery itself. So I think the government itself ought to tell us what it believes in, so that we are clear in respect of where we are going. Then we can proffer suggestions on how we get to that destination. Okay. I think it's very, very important.
Thank you, Senor.
Yeah, Evans. Tor was refining till recently, offering tooling services to Woodfields. All right? Woodfields were not running losses out of that operation. Tor was making an income. So it is possible, even with the resources you have today, for Tor to somewhat survive. But it just can't manage the commerce. It's a complex structure that Tor hasn't got the capacity for. I told you this earlier in the week, and rightly, this is also being affirmed by what you were saying. We need to just ring fence the debt.
So government will take care of the
government debt? Has to ring fence. It's already been doing it in different forms, because at the end of the day, government still has to pay for it.
They've been doing it, but piling on more.
Piling up, so yes. So let's take all that debt out and have it off. Yeah. So you actually have a debt free.
You are still piling.
No, no, you had it off. You have it off
30 seconds.
Yeah, you have it off Tor, and now you actually have a clean Tor. Yeah. You value the fiscal assets there, and that will be government's contribution into the new Tor. And let the private sector come into the game. Preferably, people with trading skills as well. because they are the same people who create competition for you in your market. So when you put their skin also in the game, they have an interest to make it work. BDCs have been a part of that story. The international oil trading companies have been part of that story. So it is possible for that conversation to happen. And if we are looking at strategic partners, one unfortunate thing is that every day we think strategic partners will have to look white in this country.
Yeah, Ghanaians can do it.
That thinking must change. Sit down with industry and let's all figure out how we can make this work. We are all beneficiaries of talk.
Okay, thank you. Doc, final word to you on this. Well, the people have been interdicted. Is that enough? What more should we do?
Yeah, I think we just need to wait.
Sorry, I mean, questioning. I want questioning to take that final. Ms. Aining?
The people are stolen.
Well, I think for me, my proposal is also that we need very diverse methods for the strategic dismantling of the corruption and the crime networks that make us understand their structure, their interlinkages, so that we can begin the process of rebuilding the strategic assets that will be able to provide services.
Yeah, I mean, and Dr. Champon.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we need to let the investigations run the full course. But beyond that, the core or the bigger issues need to be addressed, one of which is what to do with this asset and how it sits within the bigger architecture of the country's plan to become a petroleum hub in the West African sub-region.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one there. I mean, thank you, Senor.
It's good to actually that Jinapor moved from the board matter to now talk about what the shareholder really thinks. Yeah. That is where the problem
Senor, thank you very much, Sylvester, John, Tue Champon, Professor Aining, grateful. As you always know, Newsfile is all about the Bank of Africa, MTN, Ashasa University, Robert & Sons, Way Lead, Star Assurance, MG Auto Trading, CBG, Fabric Metal, Rehable Properties, grateful to them. And I must indicate that producer of the show, the director of the show, by the way, it's David Odro, and today's his birthday. I wish you a very, very happy birthday indeed. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.